You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
Welcome to Tackling a New Kingdom. It is a big day today. Today is part 2 of the unprecedented access with the Commissioner's Office, Roger Goodell. We go into our relationship, how two guys from completely different backgrounds become buddies. Also, the new PCP, personal conduct policy, and how it affects this new ruling. Deshaun Watson's ruling has just been aired, and the commissioner goes into depth about how this new iteration of the PCP applies to D. Watts. Great access. Ladies and gentlemen, Tackling a New Kingdom, Roger Goodell, part 2. Go. So now I want to transition to tackling something real. Growing up all over the country, I've got friends in all different places, but I get more of a reaction when I somehow comes up that you and I are friends somehow. Can you speak to? Oh, people always, they're like, I could name anybody, but when I say that I'm friends with Roger Goodell, they're like, no way, what kind of guy is he? Right? And so can you speak to the origins of our relationship and how a chance encounter created a pretty unique bond? What do you remember from those early days of me coming to your office?
Well, first, TJ, I want to know how you answer that question. What kind of guy he is? I'm kidding you. I remember that really, really well because it was early. I think it might have been. I was a commissioner for just a year, and I remember our first meeting here in New York. What struck me about you was how serious you took the situation, how you listened, how accountable you were for the circumstances. You didn't shy away from it. You accepted that responsibility, and you were pretty clear that you want to do things differently, right? and that's all I ever really look for. Ultimately, I love second chances, particularly with people who earn it and people who are accountable. We all make mistakes, and we put a lot of emphasis on this because it reflects on all of us. So what you do as a player reflects on every player. What reflects on the NFL in general. And I've said this many times. The players who play in this league are extraordinary people, and I don't mean that as athletes. I mean as people. Sure. And what they do and who they are and how much respect I have for them. I think we all have to protect that. And listen, I was young once too, but you guys play on a stage where everything you do gets magnified. Yeah. And that's just that's TJ, as you know, that's just part of it, right? You get the benefits, you gotta have the responsibility that comes with you. And you accepted that to me. And so I would tell you just broadly, and you and I've talked about it before, probably the people that I went through that process of discipline, and for whatever reason, maybe it's just because we were able to get real with one another and really sort of see how each of us really feels and had those tough conversations. I'm closer to those guys. Every single one of the people that I would put in that category of having to go through that process, ultimately, with very few exceptions, led to a great relationship.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great segue because my next follow-up was like speaking to all of your prize pupils, as I would call us. Why was it so important that you followed up with those guys? Because I'll tell you this, I'll never forget when we were at our brother Chris Henry's funeral. Yep. And as the commissioner, you paid your respects, but you made it a point to seek me out and kind of check on how I was doing. I was a few years removed from those situations, but you still checked in on me. So like, why has it always been so important to follow up and follow through with your guys like me, Pac-Man, Mike Vick, those guys in that nature who were a part of that first kind of iteration of the player conduct policy?
Number one, because I care about you as people. and that was more important to me, is that you got on the right path and the right road, not to just to continue to play football. It was about who you're going to be in life, what you were going to do in life. It's so clear you guys have so much to offer, and you were off the path a little bit. And
Yeah.
if you know if that experience that we all went through led to a better place, that's worth it, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and I, by the way, way you handle it and the way that all went through probably saved a lot of other guys who, hopefully avoided mistakes ultimately. So,
Absolutely.
to me, it's just about making sure we do everything we can to support our players as people more than anything else. And, if they're able to resume a career, that's great. If that's what they want to do, if they don't, they're great people who are contributing a lot, and you're at the top of the list of it. But there are lots of guys that I would put in that category that have overcome those mistakes and really are just extraordinary people making a difference in the world today. And
Yeah.
you mentioned them.
No, for sure. No, it's funny because when I was in that situation, and I know I can speak for a lot of us. I just talked to Pac. It was almost like a journey to get your name back and establish your credibility amongst your peers, the National Football League, because we ultimately, we let our peers down by being able to be taken off the field, and that was a lonely journey, but every day throughout that journey, I've always wanted people to know that the commissioner was in our corner. And when they are so surprised at the relationship, I tell people that at the toughest part of our lives, at the toughest road that we traveled, he was there and he was supporting us. And I tell everyone, like, that means the world to us. I can speak to a man how much that relationship helped us thrive and leave that stuff in our rearview mirror. So we just
Hey,
always want
DJ,
to
you
tell
know
you thank you.
what? So it's I guess it's a described sometimes as tough love, right?
It is.
You know what? It sometimes,
People don't know how tough you are, Roger. Now, like, you might look unassuming, but hey, he's a hell raiser and an ass kicker. That's one of the toughest people I know. People don't know that about you, RG.
yeah, well, I think it was OC Yermanura gave me the nickname Sheriff, which wasn't my favorite thing, but
Yes.
there's another side to that, which is that tough love, which is, hey, I'm here to support you, but you got to do your part, right? You got to do your part to try to make the right decisions. And listen, we all make mistakes, but we need to make sure that we recognize those have consequences ultimately for everybody. And I think that's the most important thing ultimately, is that people got on the right track. And by the way, when I'm done this gig, that may be the thing I'm most proud of ultimately, is how you guys have changed your lives and become the people you are, which you
Good.
always were.
No, real talk. No, I appreciate it. That's I wanted to tackle that. I mean, I guess I wanted to give people a glimpse into why the relationship exists. And so hopefully that gave them a little insight as to why I put up with, just a constant beratement about how my shitty golf swing. Okay. But now we're gonna see if we can get to something a little bit more uncomfortable and a little bit more controversial. Knowing how league discipline has changed, it's changed shape over the years. When you first came commissioner to the iteration that we have today, can you tell me the advantages of this current system of player conduct discipline?
Well, I think, listen, everything should evolve, right? Uh, and I think ultimately, it's important to be able to do that. And a lot of that evolution has come through the experiences, but it's also come through how we all look at this and how we can do it better, right? And that's what I'm driven by. Is there a better system? So in the last CBA, we negotiated changes to the discipline system. And, we're having our first experience of that right now with Deshaun Watson. And, it's been different for all of us, and we'll see as it progresses. But hopefully, it's a system that will lead to better outcomes ultimately. And, the personal conduct policy itself, it's gone through a lot of changes. We look at it consistently and and that's sometimes with the union, sometimes not, but always there's a conversation in the context of, is this the right step?
Sure.
And I think we made changes to that policy, which doesn't just apply to players. It's not a player conduct, it's a personal conduct. And we made that change several years. So it applies to me, it applies to everyone in this office, it applies to everybody in the league, whether you're in the front office or you're on the field. And so that's the point that I think we have to get everyone to understand. And I've said this many times, our standards and the expectations of people are raised. And so, our process, our policy should also be raised to be able to meet that bar. And people expect a lot from the NFL, whether it's players or coaches or commissioners or owners. Everybody has a role to play.
Well, no, I completely understand that, right? And so this is my question to you as a commissioner, right? When you talk about like upholding the integrity of the National Football League, right? So you've got the facts on one hand, and then you've got upholding the integrity of the league, right? So
Right.
It almost seems like you get a certain amount of games for your infraction, the facts, and then you get an additional games for what harm you inflict to the National Football League. Do you think that's fair or a way to handle that? Because I just don't know if players can ever get that time back.
They can't, and that's why, when you suspend a player, and you and I have talked about this a lot, right? That's the thing that probably hits you the most, right? Ultimately, because
Fuck yeah.
you're not out there with your team, and you're not out there, and I get it. But I would probably disagree with the distinction you're making about the facts versus what I would say the public perception. We all know the facts are that there's been a violation of personal conduct. Let's just keep it broad.
Yeah.
That has a reputational impact on the player, the family, the team, the league in general, every player potentially, if it's a player or if it's a coach. So all of that has an impact on us. And so that's why, listen, is there a right answer always on what that combination of discipline, whether it's a suspension, whether it's a fine, whether it's some other form of discipline? That's always in debate. And as you know, everyone's got a different opinion.
Sure.
Is that too much? Is that too little? Why is this? And you work to try to make sure you're as consistent as possible. That's why we get a lot of feedback including from the Players Association, and why our process has been changed a little bit here to balance, sort of say, okay, that may be your perspective as far as what the discipline is, but what's somebody else's perspective?
But ultimately, like, I guess, what is your perspective, right? So if you, I guess I'll find another way to answer the question. It's like, how, if you were to weigh them on a scale, what would you say your actual infraction, what would be the weight, your actual infractions, your suspension on that, and then how it reflects bad on the NFL? So let's say, like, right now he's at 6 games, and according to the person who looked at the facts, that's what he deserved. But then on this hand, it's like, yeah, but you also made the NFL look bad, the optics are bad, and so he deserves games for that. I just think that if you're getting suspended for your facts and the optics, I think we got to be real careful in that process. That's just kind of how I see it.
I agree with you, but TJ, I probably argue the facts here a little bit. And again, I don't want to get any specific to any one case, but I would say this: the new process gives the ability for the case to be heard by a neutral discipline officer, and then they determine whether there is a violation of the personal conduct policy.
That's it? They only determine that?
No, hang on. They determine that. That's the first thing they have to determine. And once they determine that, then they also determine the discipline. The NFLPA or the NFL can then appeal that, but not the first finding. The first finding of whether it was violation of personal conduct policy is exclusively that disciplinary officer's decision. The judgment on what the discipline is can be appealed by either side. So either the NFL Management Council or the NFL Players Association.
Okay.
And that's just part of the process. And so that we'll see how that all works through the system. But so it's giving an independent view on it initially, and another one if someone feels that it's not the right. And in some cases, it's not just about the suspension, it's about, okay, what's the accountability financially, or what's the accountability of what that individual is going to be required to do as far as potential treatment and their obligations to be compliant with that going forward. So that's the element that we'll see how it all shakes out, on the first case here. But more importantly, I think the system has got a very good balance to it.
Yeah. Well,
And I would disagree with you a little bit that, a lot that
that's great. We always disagree a lot.
I know, but that's what's good about the relationship, right? We can always, the facts always drive that ultimately, TJ.
Okay.
If you have facts where the PCP has been violated, that's pretty clear that that's going to also have a negative impact, as we say, whether it's on the perception of the individual, the teams, the players, the league in general. That's an outcome from the violation of the facts.
No. Okay. So when a lot of times I'll speak for the past, when a player appeals something, oftentimes we get that letter back that, hey, thanks for appealing it, but it's going to stay the same. Right. So now that you guys are appealing something, is that are they on an equal playing field where it's like, okay, thanks for appealing it, but we're going to keep to the normal? Sure. Is that possible?
Yeah, we don't know. And, if I hear it myself or whether the designee that I pick, and most all of the cases I have a designee.
Okay.
Decides it. We don't know what they're going to choose. They may choose to keep it the same. They may choose to reduce it. They could choose to increase it.
Sure.
That would be but that's final and binding at that point in time.
Got you. Well, I appreciate it. I know how hard it is to strike that balance of fairness. We all have a ton of responsibilities. And I would not want to be the one having to make that decision. So, you know what, I understand the process, and that's just how it is. And I appreciate that. All right. We'll get you off the hot seat, and I want to talk to you. I'll talk to you about some funny shit now. Okay. All right. So
you never let me off the hot seat. That's bullshit.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But I'll just say it. So put it out there a little bit. But a lot of people talk about, this is kind of a rapid fire. And if you were a coach, right? So we kind of look at you as like the sheriff of the NFL. So I want to speak to, like, if you were a coach, would you think you'd be more Parcells or more Dungy?
Wow. I respect and admire both of those. I would say it a couple ways. And I think I told you this. I was an intern for the Jets back in '83. And the defensive coordinator then was named Joe Gardy. And I was an intern in the PR department. And he asked me to stay on as a defensive assistant.
Oh, shit.
So I could have gone down that coaching path. So who knows what would happen? But I love the game. I guess I would tell you just how, and you and I have talked about this too. You got to be yourself. So I don't know whether I'd be one or the other or closer to one. I think they both have so many incredible attributes, and they were both incredibly successful. That you want to find how you would do that, but also learn from what they did.
Yeah. But I'm just speaking coaches.
If I had to pick one, probably more Tony.
Tony, okay. You okay, you've been working on a play your whole life, and this is your first year as a head coach, and it's a perfect play for 4th and 2. It's the first game of the season. Do you run the play or do you save it for a later part in the season?
Oh, you run it, man. You know, the great
Riverboat run, let it go.
Yeah, because shit, you only have 17 of these. You got to get to the dance. So you know the great thing about the NFL is every game counts and it means something. And one game can make the difference of whether you get to that dance.
No, that's true. You see some coach, they always have the mindset to have something, to save something, but you always love the coaches that go for it on that 4th and 2. All right. Your star
Which is happening more and more, which I think is really good for the game.
Yeah, there's been a whole lot of 4th downs.
Yeah, four down football is here, and coaches are taking that chance, and they want to possess the ball, right? And a lot of us, they don't want to give the ball to some of these great young quarterbacks and older quarterbacks, by the way, including TP. That they're, to me, they want to possess the ball, and as you know, nowadays, as you get towards the end of the game, it's how you possess the ball and leave 0 time on the clock, as we saw in Buffalo and Kansas City last year. You can't give the ball to the other guy.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I played, and the defense is tired as shit, and it's like maybe 4th and maybe this much, and like I said, the defense is on their heels, they're tired, and the other team punted. That was almost like a,
you said a prayer.
Yeah, we said a prayer. We were like, because if they would have went for it, I know they would have got it. So it's like maybe someone's in my head and they're just going for it now. So no, RG, thank you so much for your time today here on Tackling a New Kingdom. We appreciate your time, my friend.
I always love being you, man. I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Doing my best. All right, boss. Take care.
Okay, see you.
This episode of Tackling a New Kingdom is brought to you by Obsessed Frenchies, home of the most beautiful and spectacular French bulldogs. You can reach Obsessed Frenchies at Obsessed, OBSESSED Frenchies, FRENCHIES, one word, on Instagram, Obsessed Frenchies. They are famous for the Lucci line. And if you would like to obtain one of their puppies, they are having 2 litters in the 4th quarter of this year. All you have to do is put 25% down and get in contact with their owner, Jacob Alexander, at 602-206-8025. That's 602-206-8025. Obsessed Frenchies, home of the most beautiful and healthy French bulldogs on the market. Go get you one. What a show. Part 2 with Roger Goodell in the commissioner's office. We came, we saw, we tackled. I think it was a great interview. Leave in the comments what you think about his interpretation of the new personal conduct policy as it applies to Deshaun Watson. And as always, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend that Tackling a New Kingdom with Tank Johnson is the new podcast to listen to. Thank y'all. Take care. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for watching Believe. You can find more great content at Believe.com. That's BLEAV.com. Do you believe?